Yeah, yep. So there's a lot of messiness, obviously, in the way our culture deals with sex and love and relationships. And that's, I guess, what we are here to try and sort through tonight. I'll go ahead and say I know that I'm in the minority tonight because before I turn everything over to you, 90-day blind love bachelorettes, I wanted to at least take a moment and acknowledge that personally, I find reality TV dating shows kind of challenging. Like, not just myself, but everybody involved in the show donates all of these hours volunteering to help bring people like hopefully useful information and valuable conversations about diverse relationships, about autonomy, about dismantling the patriarchy. And, it feels kind of weird to be having a conversation about these shows that kind of routinely demonize bisexuals as being untrustworthy, that take for granted a number of toxic gender roles, and that seem to like really emphasize a toxic level of mate guarding and enforced monogamy. I mean, is that a fair take from all of you? I mean, what could I be missing here? Ashley, let me start with you.
Well, first of all, tell me how you really feel about I mean, honestly, I don't think there's any entertainment out there, books, shows, TVs, other movies, otherwise, that aren't problematic in some way. Like,
Sure.
I think with any sort of entertainment that we consume, there has to be a bit of a willing suspension of disbelief sometimes, depending on what it is that we're watching. So you're not necessarily wrong.
Sure.
But
and I get that it's very cool to dunk on reality dating shows. I mean, you can just check the YouTube chat right now, and I know that there are just as many people who base their personality around hating these shows as there are people who love these shows. So I want to try and own that.
Yeah, like I think we're all just doing our best to be within our values in this capitalist society. And sometimes
there is no ethical television consumption under late stage capitalism.
I truly believe that there's not, and if there is, it's probably not a very good show. And we're all
that's dark.
We're all just doing our best out here. And if this is the garbage that I get to consume, I will consume my garbage, and I'm fine.
I will consume my garbage, and I'm fine. Miss O'Kist, how does that sit with you?
Honestly, I agree with you, and I think that's one of the things I actually really enjoy about watching these shows, weirdly, is because my friend group it's very queer, very neurodivergent. None of the demographics that are in these shows really feature in my life pretty much at all. So I kind of watch it with this like fascination of, oh, so this is where all the bullshit in the world is coming from. People, I guess, have these like weird hang-ups of like, well, if you're friends with a man, then you're clearly cheating, or whatever weird bullshit that these things will come up with. And it's like, I forget that I guess just really straight basic people exist. So I kind of like those shows for that reason.
Yeah, all right. So there's a little bit of like ogling, and I can appreciate the voyeurism that goes into that. Phoebe, what about for you? What am I missing about the quality?
You're watching the wrong shows. You're watching the wrong one. Because in Britain we actually have some really good ones. I mean, we have First Dates and First Dates Hotel, which is basically just people going on a first date. So they've got cameras.
My own first dates are too miserable to watch. I don't
they'll have people that are like really awkward. That
do you have reality shows about like urology appointments or?
Well, there is there is Dr. Pimple Popper, so there is. Just don't go there.
Yeah. Well, so a bunch of y'all hit on this, but it does seem like a big part of what makes these shows relatable is just watching these like really big personalities in these hyperbolic situations be messy. Like, are we watching these shows out of like Schadenfreude, like a desire to see people mess up?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Human nature. Of course.
Walk me through it. Yeah.
But the thing is, though, I think it's because Britain. There are those Schadenfreude nonsense over the top shows that's called Married at First Sight. But then we also have the other shows which are just ogling at people like Naked Attraction, First Dates Hotel, First Dates, etc., where basically it's just a fly on the wall. Oh, look at these people. They're having a date. You're never going to see them again. Next! Whereas Married at First Sight UK, it's wall-to-wall nonsense. Then you have Married at First Sight Australia, Married at First Sight New Zealand, Married at First Sight USA, Married at First Sight South Africa, etc., etc., etc.
I think that's actually a good point, though. Like, there is like a culture element that goes into these shows, like, and American reality TV seems way worse with like okay, we need the drama, and if people aren't fighting, nothing is nothing is happening.
Sure.
Because I remember, like, there's actually a Love is Blind Japan, very different tone from the American one. Or even, like, if you go into Kitchen Nightmares, when that one came over to America.
Yes!
Like, we're going to need to make over the whole restaurant, otherwise no one will care. And, like, all the weird fights that weren't real, because you could see the splice from the reaction was, like, done before the makeover right of the restaurant, but the argument was like after. So
right,
like a lot of it does seem to be a way Americans like to write their reality television. We seem to just like to make it real messy here.
You write your reality TV like your politics, absolutely devoid of reality.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the part that I like about it, though, because like with any like entertainment, like it's about escapism. Like this show, and I've been watching reality TV since Jerry Springer during the summer or whenever I was like homesick from school. Like I've been watching those talk shows and shit since I was a kid, and so it's just like an escapism of it's reality, but it's not really reality.
But curated.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, is there like a cautionary tale element here? I mean, does it benefit our society to watch people like fuck up and drop the ball in these silly ways?
I mean, does it benefit our society to watch football or basketball?
Valid question. Yeah.
Hey, you just don't get it. Look, I was liking you at the start.
I mean, I feel like that question could go for like any sort of like television or entertainment or movies of like, is there a value to it?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that that's a important thing to keep in mind here. So many of the criticisms that we level in particular towards like pornography or any type of really sexual expression does tend to get a little bit of extra, I don't know, aggression from the rest of us. A lot of extra judgment.
I think one thing that when I watch reality TV, which might be different to other people watching reality TV, is the thing I always think about is the only thing real is that it's really on TV.
Yeah.
Because like none of it, I used to know somebody who worked in reality television, and I'm not going to mention the shows or anything because I don't want to get into trouble. But like, it's very heavily edited, and there's a story in mind that they're trying to tell. And I kind of think reality TV now, at least the people going into it, I think are more aware of what they're getting into. Like they know it's going to be bullshit. They know they're going to be mangled into some kind of character. And then they choose to do it because it might make them famous. Whereas I think originally people were like, oh, it's going to be reality as I am. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It's almost like the influencer fight that it's kind of turned into.
Right.
I mean, that's a big part of like The Bachelor and Bachelorette now is that like a lot of people do go on because they get these huge platforms afterwards and make a fuck ton of money just posting on Instagram and TikTok. And like, listen, again, with latent capitalism, I can't fault them for that. Shit, I do it too.
Yeah.
But I have to ask this one question. Are we focusing only on the negatives here?
No.
No.
But here's the real question. Here's a thing to pose. Are we only seeing it from the point of view of somebody who's watching the show? What happens about the people that go onto the show and actually experience the dating, experience the show itself? How different is it when you're actually a person on the show? And some of there's like Married at First Sight. you're actually getting married to somebody and you're actually having an intimate relationship with somebody. And some of these relationships do last beyond the show. So are we just focusing on this TV conglomerate must sell advertising space on whatever your network is? Whereas actually there are real people here going in there for a real purpose. And some of these people come out with real positive goals. Like some people have got married and have children. Some people have gone on first dates for the very first time and got over that hurdle. And are we just looking at this because we are seeing it as sensationalist television and forgetting there are real people here that are doing real things that could be really benefiting from this?
Yeah, I mean it's a fair point to raise, but I also know that the statistics on the longevity of most of those relationships, and not to be glib about it, but the numbers around former reality TV show contestants who have completed suicide and things along those lines are definitely worth at least being concerned about, right?
But that's the TV companies themselves that need to put in better aftercare.
Sure, yeah. I mean that's unquestionable, but they're not. Right. And we're still giving them ad dollars and everything else. I'm not saying this is a great sin, but I think it's at least worth raising the question. Right.
And that's what we should be holding them to the fire over. But we shouldn't be taking away these potential positives that people could be getting out. Sure. Because if you've got, say, an anxiety and someone offers you an opportunity to say, have a go at a marriage because you've struggled for God knows how long and you go through this experience and it doesn't work out. Okay, you've given it a go and you've gone down that avenue. But what if you actually do find somebody through these shows? Marriage isn't easy to actually get right. Marriages themselves, what is it? 2 out of 3 marriages in America end in divorce now?
That was 50%.
Crazy statistic.
Give us a little bit of credit.
I think that's actually one of the things, though, because when you look at how they construct the shows, you've always got the two camps. There's there's a few people where they're actually giving it a go on whatever the premise is. And I do find myself rooting for them deeply. And actually Love is Blind Japan was a really good example of that because people were taking it very seriously and asking important questions about how do you see your life down the line and all the things that they would like personal values and everything else, and was actually trying to find people that would work. And I find with the shows, they got the ones like that, and then they've got their popcorn criteria. So I think they invite people in to be part of the actual premise, and then they have the people in for memes.
Yeah. And then you have shows that are just memes, like Too Hot to Handle.
Yeah.
That's fair to say. I want to say the last season of Love is Blind, there were 2 couples that got married and stayed married. None of them were on the show though. All of their content got cut, probably because it was very boring, maybe.
Right?
People actually.
What does that say?
I think that's the interesting thing when people are actually being genuinely real and trying to open up about their insecurities and their hopes and dreams. That's actually what I'd like to see more of. And I think other countries maybe hold on to that more than they do here. But yeah, I think I've seen some things even on Naked Attraction where they just hit it off and we're like, yes. And then there's the ones who are I keep doing this stupid thing, and then they do the stupid thing, and I'm like, it didn't work out. And we're like, well, we already knew that.
Shocking. Yeah, everybody in episode 2 already knew that.
I would love to see more of the actual people who are in it for the actual premise and see different kinds of people navigating this shit. And I wish we could see more of that. Dear reality TV people, if you're watching,
be more real, please. Yeah.
Well, Naked Attraction really does do that. I mean, Naked Attraction, it will take anyone who's anyone on Naked Attraction. It doesn't matter whether you're a cis person, trans person, monogamous, poly, they'll take you. And I think that that's something that we need to see is that reality dating shows, well, some of them in the UK at least, are starting to reflect society and are starting to actually break down some of these cis heteronormative nonsensical relationships that we're told we must have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to Ashley's point earlier, we don't necessarily expect all of the content we consume to perfectly line up with all of our values. I like to pretend to be a space marine and play Halo just like everybody else. And I don't necessarily want to kill the Covenant or whatever, but
you don't?
I don't know. Yeah,
Why
well,
not?
all right. Well, okay.
Why not?
Consider it. But I mean, do you worry at all about normalizing the kind of bigoted beliefs that I mentioned at the top? Does it feel like sometimes these things are just like taken for granted in a lowest common denominator type of discourse?
Yeah, I think again, Love is Blind. They had one guy who was bisexual, and him and this woman that he was like, they got through the pods, and they were doing really well. And she found out he was bisexual, and she lost her damn mind. And that was really hard for me to watch because I'm just like, it was all of the bullshit stereotypes that you're used to hearing, like just coming out, and
nobody there to really like correct it. Right? Like, I don't mean to be a scold, but it didn't feel like the editing or anything else.
No, the editing lead into it. But at the end, they do like the recap show, and the guy who was, I guess, targeted by all that got to have a say. And was the conversation very great or nuanced? No, I don't think he really. I think they got too much into it's both sides. And I'm like, yeah, but one side's not right here.
Yeah.
So they gave it a go. But I don't know that these shows necessarily keep it going, like add to it. As like I said before, I watch it because all of these people are people I never encounter in my real life, and I'm like, oh my god, people who listen to this kind of music exist. This is wild to me. But I think most of the people watching it who are going to agree are already feeling that way, and they're already part of that culture. Maybe they get to see some of it mirrored back and be like, actually, that guy was a real catch and a total hottie, and she totally like fucked up there. Maybe I think it's going to be on the viewership, on the receiving end of the people actually watching it. But I think maybe some people might see the ugliness of their views reflected in the ugliness of how things play out in reality television, perhaps.
Yeah,
I hope.
if it's not being just reinforced, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, they didn't seem to be like, yes, this person is correct. This is a good thing to do. I think it was kind of shown rather flatly, perhaps. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the fact that they don't ever have any, like, anyone not straight, anyone not traditionally attractive, anyone not monogamous, anybody over any, age, anybody outside of a certain body type is, I think, problematic. And one of the things that makes it, well, way less interesting than it could be here.
Yeah.
They're like, Love is Blind. And I'm like, yeah, but like, if you know everybody on the other side is a smoking number 10 hottie that could be on Sports Illustrated at any time, are you really, really testing
How blind
this theory?
is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it truly an
10 seconds a
experiment?
day, go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've kind of touched on how the appeal of some of these shows is like that curated realness and that fake reality, obviously. I guess let me start with the two people who actually went through the K-1 visa process that's depicted in 90 Day Fiancé. How should we feel about the realness or lack thereof?
There's none.
Okay, so there's just none.
All I say is 90 Day Fiancé is a load of tosh. Absolute codswalloping, nonsensical, round the bend tosh. You may as well deep fry it and serve it with your fish and chips. That's how much reality it has left in it and how much life it's got bearing on what I'm going through at the moment and what other people that have done a K1 visa. It's nothing like that whatsoever. I mean, K1 visas are not the easiest thing to get. They don't take 15 seconds and you can't just rock up and go, yeah! You've actually got to go through the motions. You've got to have a genuine relationship. You have the US government breathing down your neck going, have you really met this person? Is this really somebody that you're in a relationship with? Can we see some photographs of you on holiday? Can we see some bank statements together? Can we see, some evidence that, you're actually living together? It's not like, hey, I've just rocked up from this country and I'm having a relationship. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
The amount of times they're like, we're just going to get married and then come over. And I'm like, I know that the government doesn't like that. Also, that's separate visa. That's a don't do. Because then they think you're being dishonest and sketchy because you didn't come to them first. And there's like there's a lot. And I think this is a mixed bag. Like, you'll see a couple of couples on that where you're like, yeah, I think they're going through the process of actually doing this shit, which is, it's stressful. And time consuming and expensive. Like you've got to get your like a printout of your criminal record or lack of, and have it, all of this weird shit. You got to go get tested for leprosy. I don't have leprosy. How many people here can say that? I can.
I don't have leprosy either. The other things you've got to bear in mind is that, yes, I don't have leprosy, but I've also had to go to the US Embassy in London on a number of occasions. I've got other appointments at the embassy in London, and it ain't cheap. My solicitor ain't cheap.
Yeah, and I just love that in that show, the narrative is almost universally the family going, well, I mean, why can't you find an American? They're just
That's
using
realistic.
you to get into America.
I mean, that feels pretty
Americans
real
fucking love
depending on where
America.
you're at.
No, it does. That feels like genuine footage. Just the notion that anybody who would go through this process would do it basically as like a form of, tricking their way into the United States.
Everyone's Dr. House and his Ukrainian bride who he didn't have sex with because he had a rule of not having sex with married women.
Yeah.
I mean, for goodness sakes, it's not how it works.
No, I mean,
I think part of that though is that they assume that people wouldn't watch that. I would watch that because like I'm a nosy bitch and I want to know the whole thing. But
High
plenty of people,
five.
yeah, right. But most people like they just want to see like the juicy parts of it, and so like the parts that are more real, like a lot of people wouldn't watch that. And I think that's part of why they put that in there, is because with American television, a lot of people just want to see people fight.
Yeah, fair to say.
There was definitely like some of the drama and stuff was real. Like I met my husband, who we've been married for 20 years as of December. It's finally in the good gifts part. But like I was in college, I met on like an old BBS board about like hardcore bands, and we had an argument and hit it off from there. But like when I was like a 21-year-old girl going home to my parents, was like, I met this guy on the internet from America. We're in love. I'm going to get married and I'm moving to America. My parents' reaction was exactly what you would expect it to be, and exactly what you would want for an episode of 90 Day Fiancé. At first it was like record scratch, what?
It's like when I told my father, it's like, okay, so you met an American whilst you were in Thailand together, and you're now doing a relationship, and you're now doing all this. Why do you make life difficult for yourself?
Why are you like this?
But I wish they could have shown some of like the more, I guess, the less juicy moments, because there were also like some really great moments when like my family did meet the guy I ended up marrying, and things went really well. They were like, my dad was really supportive, and like I had like a really good moment with him when I went on the embassy trip, because that was one of those times when it got really real, and he was there to help me like through all of that, because I was by myself. And yeah, walking down to the embassy, there'd been a riot recently, so there was a lot of people with huge guns pointing down from the roof, and they're like, is your name on the list? And I'm like, I fucking hope so. There are so many guns right now.
All I say is I love Grosvenor Square.
I do too, but not when there's a riot 2 embassies down. That's less fun. But like, I think it would be interesting if they showed some more of the process, because the process is kind of interesting. And there are conversations you wouldn't think about it necessarily, England to America, but there were a lot of culture shocks when I first moved here. And visiting is different to living, and trying to find ways to like incorporate bits of my like, I guess, culture growing up, and his, because like American holidays are weird, y'all.
They are not insane.
They're not right. So like trying to find like a balance between that, or does it still like translate for me when I like go off on some weird, I don't know, I use the wrong words for things, like y'all call our Mars bars Milky Ways, and your Three Musketeers or our Milky, all of that shit. So if I'm telling a story, just is like, actually what she's talking about is a ... And I'm like, thank you for explaining. And chips or crisps. It's like,
you invented English. I guess we perfected it. You know what? I'm not going to make that claim.